Welcome back to day 2 of my 30-day garden prep challenge. If you missed day 1, just go back to the previous video before this where I explain everything that I am doing. But today, day 2, I have my plan in place. I'm ready to start, and I decided to pick an area that was fairly easy and quick just to give myself some momentum. This first entryway right when you go into the main garden is definitely a bit of a mess, but I think it'll be fairly simple because I just have my arbor and this perennial bed all along my fence line that's very deeply wood chipped and doesn't have a ton, just a few weeds to pull out, but a lot of like random trash and just things that need to be picked up. So doing this bed first, I think will give me some nice momentum, a fairly easy thing to check off really quickly. But before I get started, let me just give you a full kind of sweep of the before so you can see what I'm starting with. Like I said, this is mainly perennials. I did have cucumbers growing here in the middle this year, which I actually did pull those vines for a few weeks ago. But I've got some comfrey, I've got this asparagus patch at the end, and then flowers at the beginning, and that's pretty much it. The nice part about this bed being really deeply mulched with wood chips is that any weeds that are growing in them pull out super easily. So it doesn't take much to get these few bits that are sticking out. In fact, I think a lot of these weeds are actually some of my cover crop seed that either spilled or blew over here. So they're not deeply rooted or anything. But one thing I really need to do in this area, besides cleaning up, is cut back all of my different comfrey plants. I have probably 4 or 5 in this little entry corner, and then another one down by my asparagus. And I kind of regret planting them here because when I go to cut them, I'm constantly fighting the thorniness of my rose vines. But if you know comfrey, it's pretty hard to get rid of. So it is what it is. And sometimes I will use the comfrey to mulch around other plants. Today, I am just going to go and throw it all to the pigs. They love it and they will eat it up, and that's a perfectly acceptable way to use your comfrey, especially later on in the season. Okay, now it is time to start tackling this wild rose situation. I actually don't mind the craziness that is this rose right now, but obviously it would be nice to walk through this entryway without getting your arms cut up, and it's only going to continue to grow and there's nowhere else for it to go. So it has to be tamed. Unfortunately, it has to be trimmed back. There's really no rhyme or reason. I'm not a professional rose trimmer. I'm just cutting back anything that's coming off of the arbor. And I probably could have even cut more than I did. I'm pretty confident that I could have cut this directly to the ground and it will still grow back and fill this entire arbor next springtime. So maybe I will get a comment from somebody suggesting that and I'll come back and I'll prune it again. But for now, I'm just making it so that it's actually something that I can walk through. And I'm not going to throw these rose vines to the pigs, though honestly, they probably would eat them. So we just put them in the burn pile, and that way I don't have to worry about kids getting into them. And now we can move on to the rest of this fence line. I realized as I started pulling weeds that the majority of the grass that was actually in this area was coming in underneath the fence line. It wasn't actually in the wood chips, hardly at all. So that's good. That means that my mulching is working, but it's also just kind of the nature of having a fence line like this, that you can weed whack from the outside, but you're still going to get those things that come in underneath. I'm not really sure how to maintain that better. I'll have to think about that for next year. But one thing I am doing now is cutting down my asparagus, which I've never done before. Usually I just let my asparagus kind of die as it gets covered in snow, and that's always been fine. But I decided to prune it back this year because mainly I wanted to deal with some of the weeds that were around it, and this just made it a little bit easier to access them. So hopefully they will be okay getting pruned. I know that I've seen people do it before without issue. I kind of am sad to see the ferns go away because I think they're really fun and lovely, but this is allowing me to get all of the grass that's growing in on the fence line and around this asparagus just a little bit more cleaned up, and even able to top off some of the mulch as well. I did not top off the mulch in every area of this row, just in mainly the corners were kind of the spots that had the most weeds coming through. But let's take a quick look again. This is the before. You can kind of see how it was, and here is after I worked on it. One thing I need to look up is if I should cut back some of the perennial flowers I have in here. The coneflower, the lupine, those are new to me. So I need to look and see if it would be beneficial to cut those back. I know sometimes perennial flowers, they benefit from being cut back to their base level. But credit where credit is due. The boys were a huge help hauling away weeds and tools and things for me, and it's kind of boring, but it's a nice fresh clean slate ready for spring. Thank you for hanging out with me today. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, if you missed, I have a free checklist that I am using to kind of guide me through my garden prep and cleanup throughout the next 30 days, and you can download it for free to see if it would be helpful for you and also prepping your space. There's a link in the description. Thanks for following. I will talk to you guys tomorrow.